All right, time for the show. Time for the show. Hold up, hold up. I'm gonna turn the music to a place where you can still hear it, but it's not overwhelming. Let's see where my camera ended up this time. Okay, that's actually pretty not bad. I can adjust it a little bit. That way you can see the top of my head and you can see Adam over there. Perfect. Cool, cool. Hello, everyone. Da-da-da-da. Cool. Everything's good. C'est bon. We get more and more professional every single time. Yes. Today, first of all, I wanted to say I'm super shocked. um, A, last Thursday we did not have a stream. Was very much intending to play One Night Hot Springs, which is and a like the art style is adorable. The subject matter that it touches on, great. It is something I will never have to face, and so I like being put in a position to feel uncomfortable and to feel in outside my comfort zone doing something I will never have to do. Um, so yes, I have not finished that game yet, but I first played it like 2, 3 years ago. Oh, that's a lie. I played it before I met Dorian. That would have been like 4 years ago, maybe even more. Um, yeah, and I thought it was great, so I wanted to play it on stream. Unfortunately, my OBS refuses to acknowledge its existence, which is unfortunate. So I am gonna try and find a way to eventually play that game, be it in video or on stream. But yeah, then after that happened, I don't know. I realized that I was not good last week. I've kind of not been good for a minute. Um, which yeah, I talk about literally like maybe not every week on stream, but I've been talking about it a lot in my videos, and I have been talking about it a little bit through my streams lately. Um, so yeah, we're gonna be working on figuring out some of that. So yeah, schedules and stuff might change and be weak. Um, but yeah, so I definitely needed that day last week. And we're also going to see what happens this week because we were supposed to hear back today from an apartment complex whether or not we're set to move in. And literally, the second that they call us, we probably can just pick up our stuff and move. So, yeah, depending on when they eventually get back to us, we might be moving. So that might cut into stream and video and all of that good stuff. But yeah, that wasn't even what I was initially going to say. I was going to say that I'm super surprised at how well the video that I put out on Sunday is doing. Yeah, on Sunday I put out a game called What's Your Gender? Is it What's Your Gender or What's My Gender? I think it's What's Your Gender. And yeah, it's great. It's a walkthrough of like gender and gender identity. It explains things like super well, very concise. It's very like fun. The art in it's beautiful. It's great. Um, I was expecting to get like a couple of views off of it, even though it's Pride Month. I was like, you know, for whatever reason, my channel doesn't exactly do like the best with LGBT content, in spite of me having full series and stuff dedicated to it. Um, but yeah, that one has like seriously popped off. So if you are finding me through that video, thank you. And if this is, you know, if you like this content, anything that has to do with like the AAGS universe, YAGS, ZAGS, AGS, all of that stuff, then by all means, go check out that video. It's very different, but it's obviously under the same scope of LGBT and learning from other people's perspectives. So, yeah, that feels great when something that I feel like is important and matters starts to kind of pop off in the algorithm. Just because I feel like I've had so many like shorts or videos that are entertaining. Like obviously I recorded it and I enjoyed it, but that are just like kind of funny sound bites, or something that I was doing just for a laugh, or just to like you know bring my mood up, and then made it into a shorter video or whatever. And those feel good too, don't get me wrong. But to have something that is like me being able to use YouTube and Twitch and all the platforms that I'm on to say something worth saying, and to like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's important to me, and the fact that it's garnering attention makes my heart feel good. That was my big thing. But yes. Anyway, with all that out of the way, yeah, I touched on video that's popping off, the fact that we might be moving this week or next week, and that's going to affect the schedule, the fact that I have been feeling a kind of way, and that's going to be affecting the schedule coming up. Yeah, I think those are all the things. So what are we doing today? Today, I think we are finishing Afterward. And yeah, last where we left off kind of, I think, is... No, it's not the end of the time, because what we're about to read takes place in 2035, and the last place we ended was in 2024, where we are right now. Yeah, and we kind of wrapped up most everything. Like, Carlos and Nick are happy. Adam and Cass have 3 kids. They're happily in a relationship, all that good stuff. And there's only really a couple of things left for us to go through. The next part of the actual timeline, I can go ahead and switch over to the actual game now. And I can put this in my ear, because now if I am listening to the audio, it's not going to, like, kill me with my focus. And we can go ahead and turn that up a little bit too. So the last bit that we have to go through is Living This Moment for Me, which Carlos received an unexpected message. I'm going to maybe assume that this has to do with his family again, which has just been a huge thing for me since last week, like going through those chapters. Yeah, it wrecked me for the week. And talking to friends about like their familial stuff, and having to like sit down with some of... I say sit down, it was a text conversation, but having like a serious talk with some of my family about stuff regarding people in our family that are not in my life. So yeah, that definitely made me feel a kind of way. And just from looking at this, it's so vague that it instantly like sends my mind into thinking like, oh, it could be his family, especially because it says Carlos receives an unexpected message. It doesn't say like he has an unexpected conversation or whatever, and we know from whichever fic that was, that Carlos's mom never hears from him again. Great, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that she doesn't reach out, because that's what parents do that lose their children. Even when they're at fault for it, they reach out for some reason. Yeah. But so that obviously has to do with mostly Carlos. If you notice though, the thumbnail that I put up for this, at least over on YouTube, has hashtag Big Nick Energy. And that is because I looked at the prologues, which we also haven't fully gone through. We know the story so far. I might take us through this at some point. Oh my god, word count 14,000? Maybe not. I know that there's one that has like his separation from his mom. But Better to Have Loved is Nick's story. It's at least him and his undergrad boyfriend. It's their story. So I think that'd be really cute to kind of like, I don't know, probably end on. It also is semi-short. It's only 5,000, which is, I guess, longer than what we're about to go through, because this is only 3,000 words. But yeah, I thought that'd be a nice way to kind of wrap this up, is sort of see something from Nick's point of view. Oh, actually, this is also from Nick's point of view. I didn't even see that until just now. All right, yeah, we are playing with Big Nick energy. Hey, Plague, how you doing? How are you today? Yeah, I was just talking about what we were going to do. I know you're over on Twitch, but I use the hashtag Big Nick Energy on my thumbnail because one of the Big Nick, yes, Big Nick, that is this character right here. I thought we were going to go through one chapter from his perspective, and Nick and I look very similar. On top of the fact that we act very similarly, so much so that the creator of this just said that it's canon that Nick and I are the same person. So, you know. But yeah, so that's nice that this entire thing is going to be told through Nick's perspective. Great. Anyway, how are you, Plague? What you doing today? Tonight? Hang on. What time is it for you? What's the time difference there? Tonight? This morning? Maybe? All right. And we are going to go ahead and... Hey, that was only 16 minutes. I'm getting better at this. It also helps that a couple people aren't here totally distracting me. We're going to go ahead and get into the chapter. Living this moment for me. Point of view, Nick. Hashtag Big Nick Energy. Did I miss question? Time difference? Yeah, I was curious what time it is for you. Because in my brain, I'm pretty sure it's like early morning. But I could be wrong. Carlos receives an unexpected message in 2035. Approximate word count 3,000. Friday, July 20th, 2035. I'm curious if there are any predictions about things that come through the text for what's coming up in the next 11 years. Quarter to 3 a.m. Boy, why are you awake? The ding of Carlos's phone pulls Nick out of his near slumber. Sorry, Carlos says, kissing Nick's head and reaching for his phone on the nightstand. I really should figure out how to silence texts, but not phone calls. It's okay, Nick says, snuggling back up against Carlos's side again and closing his eyes. After a few moments, however, he gets the sense that something's wrong from the lack of further movement by Carlos. He opens his eyes again and looks up to see Carlos staring intently at the phone with an expression he isn't sure he's seen before. Great question, right? Right? Are you working on something? Are you just playing games? Are you procrastinating something? Or are you just not wanting to go to bed? No, he has seen that expression before. The last time ended with Carlos storming out of the apartment. I was right. At least I'm still 98% sure I was correct. He grabs the phone out of Carlos's hand and sets it face down on the bed next to him. Babe, oh, wait. It may not be from his mom. It may be from his brothers. Give it back, Carlos says, his voice low in a way Nick finds slightly frightening. He steels himself and shakes his head. No, Eddie, I'm not going to ask again, Carlos says, glaring at him now. All of the love and affection from earlier, gone. Nick swallows and nods, putting the phone back in Carlos's hand, turning over in bed and away from him. Not sure what else to say. He expects Carlos to spoon him from behind, or at least put a hand against his back the way he often does, but instead he falls asleep, feeling cold. He doesn't sleep well that night. Saturday, July 21st, 2035. Nick wakes up to a cold bed, a strangely still condo, and he isn't sure why that confuses him. He remembers that he and Carlos have the day off together, and their days off usually start with homemade cinnamon rolls or French toast in the kitchen. Normally, Carlos would be bustling with the dough or starting the batter and frying some bacon, a snack while they prepare the rest of the food, he'd said the first time, filling their living space with love. He shakes his head, knowing his husband doesn't owe him anything, including home cooking. But the lack of sweet and savory smells wafting through the bedroom just reinforces thoughts that something is extremely wrong. He climbs out of bed and pads out to the living room. Carlos is sitting on the couch staring at his phone. Ooh. I don't know specifically what's happening yet, but I feel Carlos in a kind of way. Especially because, like, exactly what I was saying earlier about, like, this week having been a harder, like, family-oriented week. There was a night where, like, Dorian was ready to go to bed, and I was like, I'm gonna stay up for a little bit, and, yeah. So I feel this moment a lot. I was playing Farming Simulator. I was confident it would give me the EVs, but alas, the EPs, the sleepies. But alas, I cannot speak. Every Tuesday, I cannot speak. Might lay in bed and just watch ghost hunting videos. They usually put me to sleep. But then I wouldn't be able to watch. I mean, if ghost hunting videos put you to sleep, by all means. Ghost hunting videos like the ones on YouTube or like ghost hunting. Because if Zach Baggins puts you to sleep, you're not alone. It's not that he's a very comforting soul to me. It's that I get so damn bored hearing him just say how demons are always after him and how he is this amazing soul in the world and universe, that all the demons need to continue to go after him. So if that's what puts you to sleep, I feel you. I get you on a spiritual level there. Spiritual ghosts. See what I did there? Babe, Nick tries, struggling between wanting to comfort his husband and Carlos's clear need for space at the moment. Carlos jumps at the sound of Nick's voice, his phone dropping to the ground. Sorry, Carlos says, his voice shaky as he retrieves the device, and Nick takes that as a good sign at least. I couldn't sleep. You want me to leave you alone? Carlos shakes his head, and Nick feels like he can breathe again. No, if I haven't fucked up things with you too badly, can you hold me? Babe. Nick's on the couch in a flash, wrapping Carlos up in his arms and trying to kiss reassurance into his neck. You haven't screwed anything up. What can I do? Carlos closes his eyes and relaxes him. It feels like ages before he speaks. The woman who gave... I knew it! I knew it! Well... that makes me feel a kind of way. The woman who gave birth to me died. Oh! That hits me in a couple ways. A, because of, like, the... like, choose your own family thing. And then, like... I don't know. That sentence hits me with, like, a double whammy because I'm also adopted, so I'm like... ooh. There's multitudes of feelings going into that one. Zach is a D-bag. Ghost Adventures dropped off hard. Not Daz Games does ghost hunts and they get me. Like legit ghost hunts? Or like simulate ghost hunts. Because not gonna lie, I would be interested in seeing some not Travel Channel ghost hunting. Although I do appreciate that new show that Sapphire Sandalo and Rachel Rachel, what's her face from The Circle, whatever that show is. I appreciate that show. Nick nods, pushing his own feelings aside for the moment. Okay, good response. Best response you could give, because an I'm sorry or any like condolence thing is like would hit wrong. And my Carlos takes a deep breath. My brother texts me. I was right about that too. Which opens up a whole different thing, because this might affect him less than the his brother thing. I don't know. Whenever I hear from my siblings, like, it definitely hits different. Be it positive or negative. And I can only imagine if this goes a kind of way, because now that the parents are not in the picture, he has an opportunity to have a relationship with his brothers, who, granted, have spent the last roughly almost 3 decades, 2.5 decades, being brainwashed that their brother is living a sinful, evil life. And in that same breath, this message could have been nothing but chewing Carlos out about how Carlos wasn't there when their dad died, and now he's not there when their mom died, and that he's not invited, not that he would show up, and that they made the right choice, like cutting ties and breaking communications, and he never wants to hear from him again, and yeah. Okay. I don't know what to do. We need more context, bro. Nick's quiet for a bit, feeling like this conversation is a potential minefield, and it's because it is. There's very little that you can say correctly here. And not really sure how to approach it. What do you want to do? That is a correct thing to say. I don't know, it's not his fault. Yeah, that's a little bit more telling. Carlos shakes, and Nick knows that means the tears are coming. He shifts so Carlos's head is on his chest and kisses Carlos's head. Let it out, babe, it's okay. Carlos does, weeping in a way that makes Nick think he would do anything to relieve his husband's pain at the moment. Instead, he rubs reassuringly into Carlos's back and whispers affection into his hair, hoping he knows how much Nick loves him and will always love him. I haven't seen him in over 25 years, Carlos says between sobs, and Nick thinks he's following Carlos's thoughts enough to understand. Does his brother want to meet and have a relationship as adults now? And get to know his brother and sort of figure out what happened from Carlos's point of view? That would be maybe best case scenario? Is that like... Ooh. I don't know specifically what like the age gap between Carlos and his brothers are. I think it mentioned it, but yeah, it's that one's once again, it's a minefield. That's one that gets me in a kind of way, because yeah, Carlos is right. Anything that he was told or believes is not necessarily his fault. He is an adult and can deprogram himself from things that his parents have taught him. And who knows, maybe his mother softened up over the last 10 years after her husband died, and maybe started letting her other sons know that she has regrets about not being in Carlos's life anymore. It's not too late, he says, if you want to. That brings another wave of tears, but Nick thinks that's actually a good sign. Later. Food's here. Nick says, setting down his phone. Okay if I go get it? Carlos nods against Nick's chest and kisses his hair again. Yeah, sorry I didn't make breakfast. You're kind of going through something way else. Ooh. Nick squeezes him again before releasing him. Babe, it's not your responsibility to cook for us. Besides, I could have done that instead of ordering something. Carlos sits up and shakes his head. No, I needed this. You here like this, that's okay. Of course that's okay. Nick stands and watches as Carlos grabs his phone again. He swallows the words he wants to say, knowing Carlos needs to figure this out for himself without Nick's help. I'll be right back. He retrieves the food quickly and returns with it to find Carlos still on the couch, staring at his phone. But this time, I want to know what this message says. But this time, Carlos turns towards him and manages a slight smile, and that helps. Want to help plate, babe? Nick asks, untying the knot in the bag and pulling out the takeout containers. I know you're particular about the arrangement of items. Same. Carlos sets his phone down on the coffee table, to Nick's relief, and stands. It's fine, but I can help. He does, and they sit at the dining table to enjoy their French toast and waffles. And things almost feel normal again, if not for the unusual silence between them. How do I fix this? Carlos asks, finally breaking the silence. Ika. Nick thinks for a second, chewing his bite of food more slowly as an excuse until he's forced to swallow. Your brother? Brothers? Carlos nods. I could never forgive her, and I was worried that I would have to. But now... Oh, God. Now she's gone, Nick says, putting his hand on Carlos's, and hoping that fact doesn't set him off again. See, this is far less pressing and less affecting than the people that are here, that are reaching out, that had nothing to do with the separation between Carlos and his parents. Yeah, Carlos says, turning his hand and squeezing Nick's hand back. And Nick's thankful for it. And it's not their fault. You can text him back, Nick says. What did he say? He's worried that's too far, but Carlos just nods and takes a deep breath. He asked if this was Carlos. Said he got the number from some old letter my mom had kept in her desk. Said she had died and that the funeral was last month. That's it. Man. So he found this going through her belongings when they're trying to, like, clear out her house. I have other feelings about this now, too. Because... I'm bothered slightly by the fact that their mother never gave her other sons the option of a relationship with Carlos, which shows like an immense level of both shame, guilt, and selfishness, that for other sons to have a relationship with Carlos, she needed to have one with him. Or there was nothing at all. Nothing for any of them. That's really bothersome. I will say I respect that she didn't reach out or have them reach out to him. When she first tried, trying to persuade him using them. I hate when parents use siblings as pawns against them. And then I also respect that she didn't have them try and contact him while she was dying. Granted, it could have happened suddenly. In my brain, she probably was sick, similar to how her husband went, and yada yada. And if that was the case, then I have a modicum of respect for the fact that she didn't try and use them as a pawn to like be able to say her goodbyes to Carlos through them. I have actually had I have had a member of my birth family give personal information to other people that I did not want to meet. Trying to act as a pawn to like get back into my life. And it was thoroughly unappreciated. So I can respect that she didn't do that. And at the same time, I feel like in this specific circumstance, it would have been a good gesture at some point to give them Carlos's number and just lead with the forewarning of like, he didn't want a relationship with me when I reached out. I don't know what he'll say to you, but you know, just it's that taking responsibility thing that parents seem to not want to do when their child diverges from their life. Well, if you want to, it seems like the first thing to do would be to text back confirming it's you. But I'm not Carlos anymore, he says. Something clicks in Nick's mind. That's why you started going by Eddie. Oh my god. Nick and I, we're a little slower on the uptick, I guess. I didn't realize that, like, yeah, he changed every aspect of his name, and then when he was jokingly called Eddie and he just adopted it, yeah, he got rid of, like, everything that made him Carlos. Interesting. Nick remembers that it stopped being a teasing nickname shortly after the incident with Carlos's mother. Carlos nods. I don't think I realized why at first, but it felt right. Just like taking your last name felt right. Like I was shedding the last piece tying me to them and really becoming my own person. Oh, this is so hard. This is so hard because a large part of me is like, reach out to your brothers. They were important to you. Like, try. You're adults now. You can foster some kind of relationship. And if they choose to be as disrespectful as your parents were, then walk away from it. But also at the same time, I don't think anyone needs to put themselves through unnecessary stress and through unnecessary rejection, familial rejection. Yeah. That's so. And being able to like fully come into your own and be who you are unabashedly with a family that you've created and a life that you've built and all of this stuff that Carlos Eddie has done for himself, to not want anything to pull you back to that. I have no room to talk on this subject, I'm realizing, because there are people that have done nothing to me in my family that I have also cut off because of this exact reason, where I'm like, I don't want anything weaseling its way in to pull me back to where I was. Ouch, this is oof. Oofda. Well, Nick says, leaning over and kissing Carlos's cheek. Despite the specifics, I think the sentiment is still valid. Tell your brother it's you. See where it goes from there. Okay. Carlos takes another deep breath. Okay, after we finish eating. I'll be right there with you. Nick says, pretty sure that statement's safe now. Carlos smiles at him. Okay. Saturday, September 15th. Yep, visiting, getting to meet each other. And this is so, this is like a, a strangely unique experience, like being able to meet someone that you know or that was important to you and getting to meet them as two different people than who you were before. Because, like, 2.5 decades changes people. I am barely, I'm not yet in my third decade of life, or I'm going through my third decade of life right now, I guess. Or I'm wrapping up, I guess, my third decade of life. Yeah, it, like, the change that happens in that time is insane. They left each other as, like, at minimum, Carlos was in early 20s. Brother was probably a teenager, maybe a preteen. And now they're meeting as, like, adult men, like men in their 30s and 40s, or 35, 25 years. Yeah, like late 40s, mid to late 30s. Carlos's hand squeezes Nick's as they stand in the airport, watching the passengers walk out of the security area. Hey, it's going to be okay, Nick says, even though he thinks Carlos has actually been almost excited about the whole thing. Carlos just nods, and Nick's eyes land on a man walking towards them who looks like Carlos's doppelganger, albeit several years younger. Carlos? The man says, and Carlos flinches in a way that Nick recognizes from his own reaction when someone uses his full name. Asido! English, please, Carlos says as the man stops in front of the two of them. I, haven't spoken Spanish since I saw you last, so I'm a little rusty. Of course, he says. It's so good to see you again. Carlos nods, releasing Nick's hand. This is my, husband, Nick. Also, like I said in text, I go by Eddie now. Sorry, Eddie, of course. This is my brother Antonio. Nick holds out his hand and Antonio shakes it. Pleasure to meet you, Antonio. Antonio smiles at him, almost grinning in the way that Carlos often does. And for a second, Nick thinks he's shaking hands with a younger Carlos. Thank you for taking care of my brother. Oh. Nick blushes as Carlos's hand finds his back. It was entirely my pleasure. Let's get your bag and get you to your hotel, Carlos says, unusually businesslike and taking Nick's usual role. Then maybe we can find something to eat. Sounds good to me, Antonio starts before shaking his head and smiling. That sounds good, Eddie. Sunday, September 16th. I have something for you, Antonio says, and Nick glances over at Carlos, trying to gauge his reaction. Carlos just takes another sip of wine and nods, and Nick feels a bit of relief at that. Antonio pulls an envelope out of his pocket and holds it out towards Carlos. Whatever you think you're doing. No. 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 It was in Mom's desk. We found it when we were cleaning out her things. The letter she wrote to you. Yeah, and it means nothing. Oh, that is... Don't do that. Okay. Nick's hand finds Carlos's back automatically. Carlos stiffens as he stares at the letter. He makes no effort to take it. Yeah, don't. Don't. Tell him you don't want it in a polite way. I understand what you think it means. it does not mean the same thing. It really doesn't. Like, it's great for you that you, if you were to receive a letter from this woman, your mother, whom you love, who you know loved you and was there for you for all the big mile markers in your life and yada yada, that's great. That's so great for you. For Carlos, this is a different thing. You are holding a piece of paper from a woman who told him to get out of her life, who was not there to see him get his first apartment, to see him date, to find his husband, to be at his wedding, to watch him get his first job, to see him get his visa, to come visit him on the holidays, like, and then only after tragedy strikes decides to reach out to him, and not even reach out to him in a good positive way, reach out to him saying what she needs from him and how she's feeling and what she's ready to do and what she's ready for and blah blah blah. That is who this letter is coming from Carlos's point of view. I understand how it's coming from for you. Very different story for Carlos. Look, Eddie, I understand how much she hurt you, but there's no but at the end of that. There is nothing that can follow that sentence that's okay. That will make him want that. Or that will make anything that you're doing right now be okay. You don't, Carlos says, his voice low now. You don't understand anything. Babe, Nick wishes he knew how to diffuse the situation. Nick, you can't. This is a your hands are up situation, and you can step back. Whatever is about to go down between siblings is what's about to go down between siblings. This is very familiar from earlier this week. Not gonna lie. Antonio seems to get the message because he just nods and withdraws his hand. Sorry, I understand if you don't want it. I just thought you thought wrong. I appreciate that you thought about it for a second, but you didn't empathize with your thought. Nick, Carlos says, interrupting, and Nick isn't sure what he's asking him. What can I do? If I take that, I'm just going to rip it up or burn it. Been there. But in the moment, will feel good. You might think differently later. I'm going to adjust my camera down because I am sliding because I am upset. Carlos trails off and Nick rubs circles in his back. You take it. And after it sinks in, you can make a different choice or decide that that is the choice for you. I will say right now that I have... How did Bob not know he was going to meet me? He literally is just writing things. Crazy. I will say from my own experience with this, with almost exactly this, whatever is in that letter is not going to make Carlos feel better. At all. Because it's going to just be exactly what that phone call was. It's going to be her saying what she was ready for, how she feels, probably take a modicum of responsibility, if any, and then express the need and desire that she had in her life of what Carlos didn't fulfill for her. So, yeah. I'm curious if we're going to read it at all, or if it's going to just end up in the garbage, and that might be unlocked later for anybody that wants to know what it says. Which I feel like because I want to go through this, I will read, even though it will get me heated. Wow, I am like legitimately fuming. Okay. Nick wants to object that it's not his letter, and not his right to have it. Nick wants to object that it's not his letter, and not his right to have it given its author doesn't even know he exists. Got it. But he just nods and grabs it when Antonio offers it to him. I won't read it. I'll keep it somewhere in case. Smart. Okay. No, Carlos shakes his head. Do what you want with it. You can read it if you want to, but I don't ever want it. Don't tell me what it says. Don't keep it somewhere where I can see it. Just take it for me, if that's okay. That clap goes to Carlos for the action and to Nick for the fact that I know that he will. Because I would. I will say I've also had this happen. Not with the same letter that I already was talking about is making me fume. But I have an absolutely amazing, wonderful friend. She gives me life, I swear. When someone in my family let my address leak to one of my parents, I got a different message about it. And she was awesome enough to do this. So, Nick still isn't sure he understands, but it seems like a simple enough request anyway. Of course that's okay, babe. He sets the envelope in his lap and runs his fingers over the smooth paper, still warm from Antonio's body heat, and feeling somehow like he's been entrusted with yet another piece of Carlos's heart. Because you have. You've been entrusted with part of his heart that is in pain. Given they're married, and have been married for over 21 years, he isn't sure why this one feels like one of the most significant. Because when you're married, typically the parts that you directly affect are the happiness, and you bring comfort when there is pain. In this instance, you are literally you're given the exact thing that you wanted at the beginning of this chapter. You are being given the power to take away a piece of his pain. And also give it at some point if he ever requests it. Or withhold it if he ever requests it, because that's what he's asking for. That's why this feels significant. I don't really understand it, but it's the only piece of her I'll ever have, so I don't want it. But I also don't want it. But I also don't want to destroy it. Ooh. Carlos shrugs. Sorry, this seems unfair of me to ask of you. Eddie, you can ask me anything. Or for anything. Okay? Always. Nick finds... My brain and my heart are reeling at this. Nick finds Carlos's hand again and squeezes, feeling like he understands now. Carlos is finally trusting him with his past. Always. Carlos manages a slight smile at that. Okay. Wednesday, September 19th. Will you come visit sometime? Maybe not. Vacation? Vacation together somewhere other than Costa Rica? Antonio asks as he and Carlos break their hug. Carlos shakes his head. No, I'm okay if we text. Jorge too, but that part of my life's over. And I takes a deep breath. I'm not sure we should do this again either. You visiting, I mean. Ah. Nick thinks that Antonio looks saddened by that, even as he nods. I understand. I'm just glad to see that you're doing so well. That is a hard one.
Ah.
It is a choice you have to make for you. Thank you for making the trip, Carlos says a bit more formally than Nick thinks is appropriate, even as he understands why. And for catching me up on everything back with you and Jorge. Antonio nods again before holding his arm out towards Nick for a hug that Nick accepts. Oh God. Ooh. Take care of him, Antonio says, squeezing Nick tightly. Sorry, I know you have been. I'm just glad he found happiness, so keep taking care of him. Always, Nick says as they break. Antonio grabs his bag and smiles at Carlos again. And I suppose we'll be in touch. We will, Carlos says. He and Nick watch as Antonio joins the airport security line. I'm 100% sure that right now you mean this. I would not be surprised if they only have a handful of conversations. Neither of them says anything. Friday, September 24th. Nick doesn't read the letter. Instead, keeping it tucked away behind some of his shirts in the closet, next to his other items that remind him of Carlos. A copy of their wedding invitation, a printed recipe for casado, and a small piece of the first muffins Carlos had baked for him, in a sealed box that he's sure Carlos would make him throw away if he knew about it. Nick didn't think he did sentiment, and knows he didn't when they started dating, but Carlos had taught him, oh God, more of me and Nick being similar. He knows he didn't when they'd started dating, but Carlos had taught him a lot about himself over the years, and he thinks having memories of milestones from their mutual pasts and intertwined lives now. Are you going to read it? Adam asks as they sit together on a bench, enjoying their ice cream before their scheduled meetup with Carlos after work. Doesn't feel right for me to, Nick says. Not meant for me. Eddie doesn't do anything by accident, Adam says. Well, sometimes he does, but not this. If he said you can read it, I think that means he wants you to. At some level. Yep. I'll say that. Yep, I'll say that that's probably what that means. He wants to give you the ability to know her in the only way he can. And what's sad and beautiful about that is that because of who Nick is, the part of her that he'll get to see is her remorse and sorrow and this attempt at being a mother. And this has always been like a thing for Nick, that he wants to know his partner's family, and he'll get to see what could only be the last remaining beautiful part of her for anything that they would have had. I still disagree with what it says. I'm sure if Nick reads it, it will mean something good. Oh God. Trying to stay awake, but it ain't working. I wish you a lovely rest of your stream. Thank you for stopping in. Like, please go to bed. It's definitely past 3 o'clock now. So yeah, I hope you get good sleep. Good night. Nick nods. I know, but I just think I want to hold on to it in case he ever decides he wants to read it. Besides, it's probably just full of apologies and wishes that she'd done better by him. Something like that. This might be a little hard. Or a little generous. Nick still remembers the voicemail she'd left on Carlos's phone all those years ago. Even though he couldn't understand most of the words, he definitely understood the sentiment of a mother filled with regret over what she had done. I wish I could make him understand or make it better for him. Don't wish that. Wish that. Some things aren't your place to make better, Adam says, as much as you want to. Nick nods. That's a good way to put it. Adam swallows the last piece of his cone and stands. Want to head towards the hospital? You should be getting out soon. Nick nods, finishing the last bit of his own cone. Ready when you are. Some decades later. Oh God. Oh. Victoria sorts through her beloved uncle's shirts, gently unfolding and refolding each one as she packs them into a box. She thinks to herself it's been a while since she's seen Uncle Nick in any of these, wondering why Uncle Eddie hadn't made him throw them away sooner. Then again, she's glad Eddie hadn't, so she can have one or two to remember him by. Oh, God. Just like she'd kept Uncle Eddie's cast iron pan. Oh my God, I can't even with this. Oh. Ooh. As she looks around the closet room, the shelves previously containing Uncle Eddie's clothes already bare. She thinks again about how it was the most Uncle Nick thing ever to wait until Uncle Eddie's affairs were all handled and in order before passing himself. Sounds familiar from what her dad described as a broken heart. Even though the two funerals so close together were almost too much for her to bear. She thinks she really appreciates the sentiment of it anyway, at least in retrospect. And she appreciates not having to sort through Uncle Eddie's clothing too. As she pulls out another stack of shirts, a piece of paper comes with it and flutters to the floor. She smiles as she reads it over and realizes it's an invitation to their wedding so many years ago. Oh, God, this is... Ugh. Dr. Nicholas Edward Price and Mr. Carlos Rodrigo Salas Valverde. She reads out loud, the name sounding strange on her tongue. She'd never known him as anything other than Uncle, or rarely Eddie Price, and had never asked about who he might have been before Nick. The name feels intrusive, she decides, like it's something not meant for her. This, also jettisons me, because Dorian and I are changing our names once we get married. And yeah, it'd be interesting to have either our kids or my niece find an invitation later on in life and feel like our names are not something that pertained to us. Oof. She thinks she'd rather just remember him as Eddie, and that's how he would rather you remember him too. She puts the invitation down and her gaze settles instead on the shelf where the shirts had been and on another few items shoved into the back of the space. Pulls them out. Most of them are bits of paper or a small transparent box containing a piece of something she can't identify. But the last item is an envelope, slightly crumpled and yellowed with age. She frowns at the name on the envelope. Carlos. And it takes her a second to tie it back to the invitation and realize this was a letter to Uncle Eddie. Is this something Uncle Nick wrote him and never gave to him? She wonders, even as she knows the handwriting isn't Nick's. She hesitates for a bit, wondering if she should open it, before thinking to herself, that its proper owner isn't around to care anymore, and allowing her curiosity to win out. Oh my god. What about bed? Here you go. Whew. The envelope is still sealed, and she gingerly opens it and removes the letter, worried she's going to rip it as she gently unfolds it and smooths it out. Unfamiliar words stare up at her from the yellowed sheet, a few smudged with what looks like tears, and she realizes it's in Spanish. I kind of figured that would be the case. As she pulls out her pocket device to translate, because we have no idea what will be in store for us decades from now, if not phones. Her eyes land on the bottom, where a loopy signature sits along the text. Siempre con todo mi amor, tu madrecita. She remembers now asking her dad so many years ago about Uncle Eddie's family, and whether he was adopted. She remembers him... Ooh. Oh! She remembers him sitting her down more seriously than she thinks he'd ever seen him before that point, and telling her that her Grandpa Scott and Grandma Denise were Eddie's parents, and that she should never bring it up to Eddie. She remembers how insistent he'd been on that point, to the extent that she'd actually worried for a bit that she'd done something wrong. She'd assumed ever since then that her father and Eddie were brothers in some form. I mean, technically they are. They're chosen brothers. They were frat brothers. You know. But now as she stares at the signature, she realizes there was probably more to it than that. She dares to wonder if somehow her grandparents had kidnapped Eddie as a child or taken him in after some catastrophe. But why would this letter be with Uncle Nick's things and not Uncle Eddie's? And why was it still sealed? She doesn't like the thought that Uncle Nick was somehow in cahoots with her dad or grandparents to hide something from Eddie. She calls her dad instead of translating the letter, unsure of what to say, even as his smiling face appears in front of her. Hi, V. I found a letter, she says simply, and by the look on his face, she knows he understands. I thought you might, he says, and she thinks he looks pained from some memory that she doesn't understand yet. It's from Eddie's mom, she says, and he nods. I know the letter. It was sealed, she says, maybe a little more accusatory than she intended, but her father just smiles at that, soft and looking like he's lost in a moment. Of course it was. Of course Nick never read it, he says, seemingly to himself, and Victoria still doesn't understand. But then he's looking back at her again. I'm assuming, because you're calling me now, that you haven't read it yet either. She takes a deep breath. Uncle Eddie wasn't adopted, was he? Her father laughs at that, and she supposes that means her worst case scenario were probably incorrect. No, he wasn't. He's quiet for a bit. Let me tell you about when your uncle and I graduated from college. Oh my god, Bob, did you not put the actual letter in here? Oh. I don't know if I'm, like, relieved to not read it right now because I'm already crying, or if, like, the nosiest part of me needs to know. Oh my god. Okay, well. I don't want to end on that note. That is such a cute way to end the game. It's very it's very powerful. Oh my god. That is not where we're ending it. A, because it's only been an hour and I feel like that's barely a stream. B, because I kind of want to go through. You know what? There are, I'm looking at this. There are 3 prologues, which I might tie into another one. I think I am going to stop this one. Partially because I'm looking at the time and Dorian is probably home now. So I will get to spend time with him. B, I am crying. C, that was the true ending of the game. So, and by that I mean like everything from YAGS to ZAGS to AGS and all the other like games in between. That was the true ending. Um oh god, and it was just beautiful. And it hits in such a way. It might hit me differently because I identify with some of these a little more and a little less in some certain areas. But oh my god, that was I can't even. Ooh. All right, so yeah, went kind of different than what I said I was gonna do, but I am gonna end it right here. Um, Thank you everybody that came in. Thank you for everybody that's watching this as a VOD. I am not going to be rating. However, if you are over on Twitch, feel free to go check out who is actually on Twitch right now. It looks like, oh, actually, it looks like Sylphrin is on, so feel free to go check her out, or DigiVibes. I'm probably gonna be hanging out over there to get myself not all up in the feels. All right, so with that, yeah, I will see you guys. I know I already said at the beginning of stream, we might be moving sometime in the next few days. And if that's the case, I'm going to be posting on YouTube what stream schedule and video schedule looks like. But if that gets postponed or if we still remain kind of in the dark about that, then I will see you guys Thursday. I am going to definitely stream this week. We're probably going to do more Echoes of the Plum Grove or Fallout 4. Yeah, tomorrow we have another short coming out. And aside from that, I will see you all next time. Bye!